Hi, my name is Judy and I'm the City Stitcher, and welcome to my Flosstube channel. Today is Sunday, June the 25th, and it's been an okay day. I'm filming a little later in the afternoon than I was expecting because, true to form, as I was getting everything pulled together for my Flosstube video is when the big rumbling started. Now, I'm not actually sure we actually got rain, but there was a lot of rumbling and I went, that's going to come through. And it wouldn't, and loud enough that it wouldn't matter where I was recording in the house, that the rumbling of the thunder was going to come through. So it seems to have moved on. So it's later than I was expecting. The sun is out somewhat. The temperature is about 19-20 degrees Celsius, and anyway, I'm going to pretend to do math. So like 68 degrees Fahrenheit, I think is what it is right now. So, you know, not super warm temperatures. For some people, they love that temperature. I, of course, would like it to be a little warmer, but I will take the cloudy and the rain because we need it. And I'm totally fine with it. I forgot to get the wildfire count for this week, so check back next week. I will try and keep an eye on that thing. You know, the interesting thing with the wildfires is sometimes it's like all anybody's talking about, and it's usually because people are having to be evacuated or people are being allowed to go back. Yeah, from a wildfire perspective, certainly from the news I've ingested this week, it was more about the international firefighters that have been coming up to help out with the wildfires that are occurring in Ontario. So thank you to those of you in other countries that are sending firefighters to help us out with our many wildfires across the country. So thank you. If you are new to this channel, this is a channel that is primarily about cross stitching, and but sometimes there is crocheting depending on how my week has gone, but primarily about cross stitch and the stitching that I've done over the past week. So if you are a new viewer, thank you for stopping by and spending some time with me. And as always, to those of you who come back and check up on my journey, thank you for coming back and being interested in my stitching journey and asking questions and comments through the comment section down below. Always love hearing from you. So with that, just a couple of things from the comments on last week's video. So Deb, the Traveling Stocking Stitcher, of course, thanked me for sending people to her channel on Krynic. If you're not watching Deb, the Traveling Stocking Stitcher, you should. She's going to come up later on in the topic for this week. But yes, she's great. I love watching her channel. The last one on the Dalmatian coast, that was great. Anyway, and I have an email to send to you, Deb, with actually, I found some vintage Canada travel posters in cross stitch that I'm going to send some links your way. I don't know if they're exactly what you're looking for, but I'm going to send them to you anyway. And what you do with them is up to you. But I stumbled across them and I went, ooh, Deb needs a vintage Canada travel poster. So that email should be coming to you this week, which will also have the answers to the questions we've been about I Heard the Bells. So thank you. Hopefully that will come to you this week. Barb left a really good comment about the yarn and about using my leftover random yarn bits to make a scrappy blanket or to do granny squares and put it together as a blanket, and even if it's not my particular style, to donate it to a charity, which is awesome. That's potential. That's certainly in the cards for what I may end up doing. I don't have enough at the current moment to really make something specific, but I have been, of course, on the YouTube looking for things of what people have done with their leftover bits of yarn, and I'm contemplating some options, and certainly the Ujamagrammas for their Bags, Babies, and Beyond sale, which will be coming up in the fall in October, I think. I don't have a date, but you know I will be telling you once I get that date from Cheryl. hopefully, maybe if I came up with something, Eugemagramas would be my first stop, and hopefully Cheryl won't necessarily reject it. We'll see. Check back later. Right now, with my little bits of leftover, I don't have enough to do anything, but I'm certainly, as you can tell, it's certainly part of things that I'm mulling over in the back of my mind, you know, what I'm going to do with those and how I'm going to put them together and put them to a purposeful use. So, but thank you for that option. That's it. That may be how it comes out. And then Lisa W. wanted to know if I've tried the metallics from Overswa. And the answer is no, I have not actually tried them. I own some of them. Of course I own some of them. Particularly, I've got a braid from Overswa. It's the called for metallic in the Kringles pattern, which it's either from Little House Needleworks or from Country Cottage Needleworks, because they're sort of related companies, so it's one of those two. But it's the Kringles pattern, calls for a specific metallic from Overswa, and I do have that in my stash. I haven't done Kringles, so I haven't used it, so I don't know. You also asked whether or not if I have used the Bijou metallic, and I have. If you go back like in January 2022, at the very beginning of January or February of 2022, when I was working on the sampler of Stitches by the Drawn Thread, that very first pattern, the ABC pattern, did call for some Bijou metallic, which I did use. That pattern called for Bijou metallic if you have some of the original patterns, which I of course did. In the newer versions, like if you were to buy a pattern, that Sampler of Stitches pattern now by the Drawn Thread, it won't call for the Bijou metallic, because they only used it in that one block and they didn't use it anywhere else. And I was all hot to trot that I was going to find a place so I could insert more metallic as I was going through, which of course never happened. But I did try the Bijou metallic. It was fine. I don't know how wide the color palette is for the Bijou metallic. So anyway, something's going on with my voice, so thank heavens I come prepared. Okay. Sorry, it's nothing exciting. It's pop. It's actually some Coca-Cola. Anyway. All right. And then also for Lisa W., I'm sorry. I apologize profusely that you spat out your tea based on my description of the Afghan, but you know what I meant. Anyway, glad you enjoyed it, but the statement is true. Anyway, yes, that's a little bit of an insider joke. She knows exactly what's going on with that. La 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 la. All right, and then last for Rachel Q, she was talking about that she was going to go to Michael's. She was going to try and go find this mini frame. It does come in other colors. I will put the SKU down in the notes section of this week in case you're looking for this. Like I say, when I picked it up, it was 50% off, so it was a very economical option. We'll be talking about this actually, we probably won't be talking about this week. It might be talked about in about a month from now, maybe. We'll see. Check back. All right, but I will put the SKU in the note section down below in case you're having any difficulties. Like I say, it does come in a variety of colors. I believe that at my Michael's there were like 4, maybe 5 wooden versions of that, but they do have other frames that should fit similar sizes. All right. Okay. That's the questions and comments that we're going to talk about this week. In terms of the order of how the agenda for this particular video is going to go, it's going to be a little bit unusual. We're going to do all of the things except for crocheting and the actual stitching first. Then we're going to do the actual stitching because it's going to lead into the topic, and I will save the crocheting until very, very last for those people who aren't interested in my crocheting whatsoever. All right, so let's talk about announcements. I have booked the library for our July Stitching at the Library get-together. I have booked the Signal Hill Library, so we're back to the one that's on the west side of Calgary. Signal Hill Library, Saturday, July the 22nd, so 3 Saturdays from now. So it is the Saturday after the Stampede is wrapped up. It is in the afternoon from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. So as usual, I will be sending that out in an email to those people who've asked to be on my email distribution list. As always, if you are watching, if you're watching this video and you aren't on that email distribution list, you do not have to be on the distribution list. You can just show up. You are welcome to, if you're, okay, let's pretend if you're in Toronto and you know someone in Calgary, don't hesitate to say, hey, by the way, did you know that there's a stitching a group that gets together at the library? Everyone is welcome. You know, send them on over. I think we're a very welcoming group. I think we are. And we have room for more. So feel free to talk about it with your friends. I certainly know that in a Facebook post, I did let someone was like going, I just wish there was someone in Calgary where I could get together with people. So I did send them a note. So we'll, but it's only once a month, and schedules and life and all of those things. And I know that not everybody can make it to everyone, and that's the reality as well. So, and let's not kid ourselves. Step number 1 when I book the library is how it fits into my schedule. Since I'm hosting, I do need to be there. But anyway, as always, so that's when the next one is. July the 22nd, Signal Hill Library, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Those details will be in the notes section down below as well. Let's talk about some Stashquisitions. Okay, we've talked about this, really. I've told you this before. I do like to space out my Stashquisitioning. Really is just... I think some of it has to do with the fact that I've got a friend who really enjoys the Stashquisition section, and if I do it all at once, then, she's bereft. I'll show what I've got to show, but there is more Stashquisitioning, which I will be showing over the next several weeks. Don't you worry. But I had talked a few weeks ago about dyeing for cross stitch, which is... So this is the terrible part. I have no idea what the lady's name is. She's got a website. She does hand-dyed threads and fabrics, and I and my friend, we love the site. Super speedy turnaround time. We've loved everything we've gotten from her, so we can't say she's fantastic. Whatever her name is. I call her Dyeing for Cross Stitch. And I will put a link to the website itself, as well as if the items I'm about to show you are still available, I will put a link to them as well in case you're looking for them. So I had mentioned usually when I'm shopping from Dyeing for Cross Stitch, or my friend is wanting to place an order, we do let each other know so that we can combine, international shipping, but she's actually got, for me, very reasonable international shipping, but we still like to combine. So the first piece of fabric I'm going to show you is actually my friend's fabric. She has seen this because I did have it last week, and I took it to the stitching at the library. As you all know, I like to do my shopping for Christmas and birthdays over the course of the year. And I did say this to her, and I said, you know, you can let me know whether you want to take the fabric right away or if you would like it to show up in the yellow bag. And she and I have this joke. Every year her gift is in a yellow gift bag, and there's a very big story behind why that is. She always returns it because I need it for the next year. So she has a bag going. So this is 25 count Lugana. This is called medium trellis. Now, I'm going. So, you know, it's a little more greeny, not quite so minty as the chair behind me. But so this is the medium version in 25 count Lugana. She did also get it in the light, but she decided she needed that one right away, which is totally fine. So the light is also nice. The next time we do an order, I might need to get some trellis. I need to go look at the stash before we come to that conclusion. But the thing that started off this particular order for me was the May fabric of the month. When she has a fabric of the month, there's usually it's on sale during the month, and so we needed to get our order in quick before we ran out of May. Like I say, we put the order in just before the end of May, and I had the package arrived within 2 weeks to my house. Now, if some of you are going like, that's not as fast as others, I will also say that some of the items, some of the fabric, my friend's fabric was not in the category that was ready to ship. So she would have had to have dyed those pieces before my order could go out. But this does not have a name. This is called May Fabric of the Month. And I got it in 40 count Verdal. So this is, yeah, that's about right. 40 count Verdal. Yeah, so it's more aqua. So I got a piece in 40 count, and I got a piece in, so still May Fabric of the Month. I got a piece that is 32 count Jobelin. Now this is where it's going to get interesting. I did have these fabrics at the stitching at the library, so people could say, oh yeah, not too bad. So they are in different fabrics. This is the Verdal, this is the Jobelin, and so it is true. This one is a little more green, this one is a little more blue. I wasn't sure if that was going to show up on camera. I like both of them, but I think pretty much everything else that I've ordered, 95% of the fabric that I've ordered from Dime for Cross Stitch has been a Lugana. So whether it was 28 or 32 count, it's usually been Lugana. I did buy one piece of fabric that was a 28 count Monaco. But so this is the one where I went, let's try a Jobelin. I like Jobelin. So I just wanted to see, the fabric has a different fiber content than Lugana, and certainly different than the Verdal. So I just wanted to see. Now, I like both of them. I'm not displeased. So it worked out fantastic. So there might next time we put in orders, there might be some Jobelin coming into the mix. All right. So those are, two pieces of fabric to my stash, one piece of fabric goes into my yellow gift bag for my friend. And then I did get some threads for her threads. You can get them in 3 different sizes. I don't remember. It's like you can get a normal skein, a bigger skein, and you can get a lot on a skein. So I got, this is called Dark Harbor. Just having that moment going, I don't have any white stuff near me to put this up against. Okay, there you go. So it's a nice navy. It you can't really see the overdyed very well in the camera, but it is there, a little bit there, right? It is an overdyed, but it is truly all in like the navy family, which I really like. So I, of course, got the biggest skein of this possible. This was her big size. I only got the one. I went, this should be plenty for whatever it is that I come up to do with it. And then also in the blue family, I got 2 skeins of Out of the Blue. We all know blue is my favorite color, so, but I thought it was a really interesting variegation because it's got that sort of more, a little bit of a brighter blue in there. You know, so I thought that would be interesting. So those are the threads, that I got from Dyeing for Cross Stitch. Again, both my friend and I, we can't say enough positive things about them. It's an awesome place to shop. If you're looking for overdyed fabric, one of my favorite things about them is that she puts pictures of the actual fabric type. So one of my issues with other sites, you know, so I'm gonna rag on Picture This Plus a bit. If you go to anybody's site where they're talking about Picture This Plus, they have the fabric picture from Picture This, generally from Picture This Plus. Not always. I know that there are some shops out there who they do put pictures on their websites of the fabric that they have received, but for a lot of shops they give you the Picture This Plus. Generally those pictures are done on linen, and as we've talked about before, linen and even weaves and Ada's take the dyes very differently. I think I still have that one hair. Anyway, if I could solve it, I'd get rid of it. So the thing that I like about Dyeing for Cross Stitch is she does put DMC onto, she shows it on the fabric, and like if you're looking at even weaves, she has an piece of overdyed even weave. Now she may be showing you 28 count and you're looking for 32, or you're looking for 28 and she's showing you 32, but once you get into that family range, there's not going to be that big of a difference. When you're looking at linen, you're going to have a linen sample for the most part. And same thing for Ada. So I really appreciate that. When I took these items to the library, and you know, we of course were having conversations about that. You know, one of the comments was, someone else who went, I really appreciate that because everybody's monitor is different. So whether you're looking at on your computer or your laptop or your tablet or your phone or your television or whatever it is, once you get things onto a screen, it may not be accurate. But, you know, because she puts these DMC swatches on there, for those of us who either have large DMC collections or we have the fabulous DMC thread, you know, the color card, that's what I'm looking for. You know, if it shows it with a picture of DMC 502 or DMC 796 or whatever it is, regardless of how your monitor, your device, whatever is showing, is reflecting that color, you can always go to your actual honest to goodness DMC and go, what does that really look like? And it gives you a really good sense of the color. So I love that about Dyeing for Cross Stitch. All right, so those are my Stashquisitions for this week. I just wanted to talk a little bit, sorry, the birds are just, I don't know what's going on, but they seem to be traveling. So there's a big tree over here, and there's a big tree over there and there. Anyway, they seem to be really enjoying going back and forth, which is unusual, but whatever. Like, seriously. Anyway. Anyway, as always, something is happening in my backyard, so whether it's snow boots that are being flung over the fence or birds doing weird things. Anywho. All right. Okay. Let's talk about the Cliffside stitches stitch along. I talked about this back in June because their big 36-week tile stitch along was wrapping up on June 11th. And it was great, and I got all my stuff downloaded, which was awesome because it is still available if you want those patterns. It is a pattern that you need to pay for now. I will put a link to that in the note section down below, but it was really great, and they are gearing up to do another stitch along. They have released the borders. That's not true. They originally released the outline for where everything was going, and it was really interesting because I finally had a chance this week to look at it and went, ooh, isn't that interesting? And then of course I wasn't on it right away because I'm just like, it's a 9-week sal, it'll be fine. 9 weeks, I've got time, which I do. But I finally had time this week to go in and look at it and go, it looks really interesting. It's a very interesting arrangement of how the designs are coming out. Similar to the previous one, there is a cross-stitch option and a blackwork option. And given the configuration of the boxes, you can, sorry, I just realized I forgot to turn something off. Anyway, you've got the option to either do it all one way or you can combine them. So it'll be fascinating to see how this one comes out. Don't you hate when your device doesn't do the thing that you want it to do? Okay. Mute. I think it's all fine now. Anyway, so I will put a link to the new one. Like I say, the outline for all of the blocks has been released, but apparently there was a clamor from everybody talking about they wanted the border so that they didn't have to wait and do the border all at the end. And so they have released the border options. As usual, there's not just one border, there's multiple borders. And there is someone in the Facebook group, her name is Sandy Brewer, and she designed her own border and has very, very graciously, she charted it all out and put it into the files section of the new Cliffside Stitches Sal group on Facebook. So you can only get that if you're part of the Facebook group. So I will put a link. I will put a link to where the Cliffside Stitches new sal is showing up on the website. You do not have to be on Facebook to get the free downloads. But I will also put a link to the Facebook group for the upcoming stitch along in case you're wanting to see what people are doing on that. Kudos to the people who are coming up. See, it's a mystery stitch along, and there are people who are absolutely going to be stitching along and keeping up and doing all of those amazing things. I have no idea how these people come up with color palettes when they don't know what any of the elements are. But if you think I haven't been in that Facebook group sort of looking at people's palettes and downloading pictures of options, you're out of your mind. Of course, I've been downloading those. All right, just briefly back to Stashquisitions. I will say yesterday was a bad day for me. I fell down the rabbit hole. Fat Quarter Shop was having a sale. By the time this video goes up, I believe that the sale will be over because it will probably be coming up hopefully late on Sunday night. I'm hoping it's actually going to get fully done on Sunday. Fat Quarter Shop was having a sale, which was great. So I put in an order. It's all for PDF charts, some of which I really, you know that I've said sometimes I have things where I have no business buying it. This time I had some things that I definitely had business buying. I need them. I need them actually for the current year, and we'll talk about that probably in a couple of weeks. So I got that order in. It also did lead me, okay, because I'm a price comparison person, and let's look at my options in 27 things. So I was comparing some options of where things were going on, and it also led me to some of the things in my Etsy cart were on sale, so I might have done some Etsy shopping. And once you get into Etsy, there are suggestions and things. And anyway, so yesterday was a fairly decent black hole of trying to get my Fat Quarter Shop order put in. I was like, don't wait until Sunday. You have to get it done on Saturday. And did some random Etsy shopping. So we'll be talking about that in some future videos. Hopefully I'm going to do some printouts and etc. so that you'll see what I'm talking about. All right. Okay, we've talked about, yes, announcements, Stashquisitioning. All right, let's get into the actual stitching. It was an okay stitchy week, not a great stitchy week. As I was getting everything ready, I was like going, wow, this is not a lot. Not a lot. Because there's really only 2 projects that I've worked on. So, as always, I'm starting with my... So last week was a good Sunday because I didn't have anything else I was supposed to be stitching on the 18th. So I was working on my Sunday stitch, which is Winter ABCs by Little House Needleworks. I am stitching this on a 28 count Springfield Sage Lugana, which I love. It's awesome. And ended up doing not too badly. All right, so what did I get done? So I got the, so you can see I got the red done here. So I got my, whether they're French knots or colonial knots, I honestly don't know the difference between the 2 of them, but I know how to do a knot of some kind, and I did that. So I got my knots here on top of the skates. I got these, you know, random red stitches done here at the top. I got 4 out of the 6 done down here, and I was out of the length of thread at that point in time, and I just went, as usual, I procrastinated because I couldn't get a path from these to where the missing 2 are conveniently, and they were going to need to be a new start and stop, and I was done with that length of thread, and I went, well, okay, we'll come back to that. There is red down here in the quilt that is going, that's going on those posts. So when in doubt, delay, right? So I've got 2 stitches left to go up here. I hate the random individual stitches, but anyway, it'll be fine. They'll get done. So I came down and did the word mittens, did NOP while I had the white out, and did the white down here. Because in my head, my real goal was to get M and N, but then I had to do the post, so I needed the P, so I knew that I counted correctly, which is why it ended up being MNOP, snow, and 2 posts. So tomorrow on Monday, not on Sunday, we'll talk about that in a bit, but tomorrow on Monday, this will come out again, and hopefully I will get this, all of the quilt completed, which means that I will be, everything to P will be completed. So as far as I'm concerned, we are over halfway, because regardless of the 2 stitches that are missing above there, I've got well over 2 stitches below. I'm past M. We're over, as far as I'm concerned. I didn't check in Markup RxP to see the stitch percentage, but I am over 50% done on my winter ABCs. So I think that's coming along great. Very, very happy with this. I was just having a going, what is this? Oh yeah, that's the There's a tree there, right? Yeah, there's a little tiny tree that needs to get stitched in here. I'm like, what is that weird? The things that you see when you're filming a Flosstube video. Anyway, so it's coming along great. Very, very pleased with that. Yep. All right. So then the only other project that I've worked on this week is my Canadian Patriotic Sampler, technically by Jeannette Douglas Designs. But in this instance, it's Canadian Patriotic Sampler by Jeannette Douglas Designs with adjustments by Judy Ryan. Anyway, so it's JDD plus a little bit. And which is why the topic is going to be dealt with in conjunction with this particular piece. And I was just, I had the comment last week by someone who said, you should really, your channel name should be, so I've made some changes because I do a lot of that. As well as I was watching some Flosstube this week with people talking about how they struggle when they're contemplating making changes and what to do when they don't feel like they're good at that. So that's how this week's topic came about, because I am making changes, which is not atypical for me, and I just wanted to talk about the process. So I will, so this is Jeanette's fabulous, fabulous design. So this is the Canadian Patriotic Sampler as designed by Jeannette Douglas. And for this week, fortunately, I am in a position where almost all of the elements that I am changing in that design have now been stitched. So I am stitching this on a 32 count Pearl Grey Lugana using all of the called for colors from the chart, other than I changed Arroyo, which was used for, so in the original design was used for all of the words. So that color was only used in the words. I changed it from Arroyo to Caron Waterlilies Graphite. So that's what mine is. One, because I wasn't stitching it on platinum. Two, Arroyo was just a little too browny for me. So I changed it. Anyway, so here's where my, here's where mine is at the moment. So we're getting close. I've got, like I say, almost all of the unique Judy change elements are in. There's one more that is unique to me that needs to go into here, and then I'm into the bottom border. I was really hoping that by today I would have started the border, and if I had not been sucked into online shopping and Etsy viewing and looking at Cliffside Stitches Sal Facebook posts and, you know, what was happening at the Stitch and Stash retreat in Edmonton, I probably would have gotten a start on this bottom band, which is a repeat of this top one. But all right, so this is where I'm at, and I wanted to talk through my process. So one of the things, the reason why I want to, now, if you aren't interested in it, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for catching up. Check in next week, see how I'm doing, because we are officially into the topic, and this isn't everybody's jam. There are a lot of stitchers out there where they love seeing a chart and going, I'm doing the called for, and that's great. I think people are coming to a point where there are more stitchers that are going like, well, what if I don't like all of it? What do I do? And for a lot of people, that's really intimidating. For me, it hasn't been intimidating, because even as a kid growing up with, you know, my grandmother, my aunt and my mom being stitchers. My grandmother was more of a follow the pattern because she was really doing more needlepoint pictures than cross stitch, but she did do cross stitch. But certainly my mom and aunt who were doing more cross stitch, it is not uncommon for them to look at something and change the colors. So I started off in a family that was going like, it's really lovely if only they did it in the right colors. And I don't have it handy, but there's an Easter piece that I finished off after the aunt that did the cross stitching passed away, and I did chuckle because in the Stony Creek book, there's the called for colors, and then there was option 1, option 2, and what she finally ended up starting stitching the piece in. So it took her 3 tries. And so for people who are struggling on this topic and going like, they aren't sure what to do, one of the things that I want to talk about is the thought process. And even in my jobs, it's like, it's hard to train people up if you aren't willing to tell them what the thought process is on how you got to that answer. So there's a couple of things. One, if you are new to changing things and you're like, this is really hard, yeah. Changing things and changing design elements is a skill. And just like the majority of skills, it requires practice. It requires experience. So you need to have done it multiple times, and not just a couple of times. You need to do it multiple times before you start getting a feel for your color palettes, how colors work together, what feels good to you. One of your color palettes might be a really lovely color palette, but for me, it won't work because it's too yellow. And it's not to say that it's not a great color palette. It's just not the right color palette for me. You may look at some of my color palettes and go, that would be really lovely, but oh my goodness, could you just not add some yellow into that thing and brighten it up? It means you like my color palette, but even you need to adjust mine. And you need to do that practice and do it more. You have to be open to doing it more and more times to develop your skill and work on your skill. I know from the pattern designers that live near me that I know personally, they will tell you sometimes a color palette for a design just comes together like nobody's business. And I have one color palette that I have kitted up. I don't know what I'm going to use it for, but I remember being at the store going, crap, now that's a color palette. Like, it's almost all there. I just needed to add one thing to it and it was all set. I haven't used it for anything, but I went, that is a fantastic color palette. And so the designers I know say sometimes you just have that one where you're like, oh my goodness, the color palette comes together like lickety split, like magic. And other times they struggle and they look at it and they change one thing and they pull one thing out and they put one thing back in, and so anytime you have an opportunity to thank your designer, because the amount of time that they would have spent coming up with the design elements and the color palettes is potentially a lot more than you think. Just look at when I was talking about coming up with my redesign for this particular, like, I'm on version 7 or version 8 of what my adjustments are. It's not like I looked at it and went lickety split fixed. No, I knew what I wanted to change and I knew what I wanted to adjust and potentially how it was going to look. And even then, sort of things changed. So from a color palette perspective, practice, 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 practice. Ask your friends. It's totally fine to say to your stitching friends, whether it's online or in person, to just sort of say, what do you think of this? Now, I've got friends in my life where I can show them a palette where they go, okay, we're looking at the palette because we know that it's you. It's not for them. It's not necessarily their palette, but they can work with and going like, here's some ideas. I think it's good for you, or I think you might want to change this. You know, I ask other people for opinions on some of my color palettes and things that I'm, you know, I've asked you guys here on Flosstube, what do you think about this? Do you think it should be this? How are we feeling about this? And it's really because I honestly am looking for feedback. It's my project, my decision will be the final word, but I'm looking for that influx of thoughts and opinions, and some of it may work for me, some of it may not work for me, and that's totally fine. It's the art of practicing it. So certainly from a color palette perspective, that's really what the process is. I don't have my Ann Morrison handy to show you, but certainly I changed almost all of the, well, I changed technically all of the colors in my palette for Hands Across the Sea Ann Morrison sampler. Now, some of the concepts stayed the same, right? So there was a green that was called for. I used green as well, just not the same green that was called for. And you can see that in when I changed the color palette for the sampler of Stitches the Drawn Thread. You know, they called for a blue, and I used blues, just not the called for blues. They called for green. I used greens, just not the called for green. So sometimes it's just like you need to tonally move what's in there into a pink that you like better, or a green that you like better, or a blue that you like better, or a red that you like better. And sometimes you have to change all of the colors, right? So on this one, the fact that I changed the Arroyo, which I should haul it out. I do not. I thought I had anyway. And the reason why I wanted to change the Arroyo, like I said, it was because the called for fabric was a platinum, which is a more brown fabric. To many people, it's not really brown. It's just, you know, really nice neutral. But to me, it's a lot more brown. And so I knew that I was changing my fabric to a gray. And when I put it on there, I didn't like the combination. So then I went through, that's what I have with me, is I have the other grays that I tried. And some people may go, they don't look that different. But to me, when I did samples, I did stitch samples. You know, on a corner of this exact piece of fabric in a corner, I stitched a bunch of, you know, blocks of, I don't know, 3 by 4. So 12 stitches per color, just, you know, in the margin, and just went, which one do I like best? And I ended up choosing the Graphite by Caron Waterlilies. And I am happy with it. I'm happy with how this looks on my gray fabric. If I had chosen to stitch this on Silvery Moon, this may not have been the right choice for me, nor it might have been one of the other ones. You know, so who knows? So that was change number 1 right off the get-go. You know, and again, given how red and white this is, it's a Canadian Patriotic Sampler. Red and white, that's us. You know, so there's a lot of different reds. There's Crimson and Hollyberry and Poinsettia and Simply Strawberry are the 4 reds that are used in this design, which I didn't change any of those. As you can see, the combination of those different reds is how you end up with this effect in these maple leaves in that center section. Okay, so that's step number 1. So then the next step was, and this is a me thing, I don't love hearts on designs. I don't love them. If I can change them into a diamond easily, that's usually what I do. I go, that's very nice, it's a heart, I change it into a diamond. I don't, it's not that I will never stitch a heart into a design, but generally if I have the option, I change the hearts into diamonds. I don't love hearts on designs. And that's a me thing. It's just not a motif I love. And I haven't enjoyed hearts for a very, very long time. I just Anyway, I have a sentence that I have said to friends of mine, and they just look at me and go like, really? I'm like, going, I know it doesn't make any sense, but I don't love them. So on this one, right, this is a heart version of sort of the flag, and then there's 2 hearts down here. So step number 1, changing this into a diamond isn't going to work. This I maybe could have done something with, but you know, my first part was like, well, that's going to have to get changed. So this is going to have to get changed. This is going to have to get changed, right? So we started off with 2 elements, not a problem. 2 elements that require changes. Then I had the thing where it's like, you know, I like things to be symmetrical and proportionate, which is why I love a good mandala design. I have a thing visually for my aesthetic where I go, I love things to be symmetrical. So technically, the Canadian flag works well for me because, you know, you've got 2 edges of equal size and a center section that is different. From a proportional symmetrical perspective, that appeals to me. You know, countries with flags where it's 3 stripes, I'm totally fine with that. Whether they're vertical or horizontal, as long as they're equal, I'm totally fine. They're proportional, symmetrical, it's all good. Anyway, I have a thing. So my next issue was that this big design here was not centered. It was, to me, it felt like the weight of this needed to be centered. Do I have any good reason? It's just, no, it's a me thing. And so that was really my big goal, was to get this chunk of design centered onto my piece, right? Which is what I've now accomplished. And then really what happened is I just said, so what I needed to do was, right? So to me, it goes, there's this part of the design and this part of the design, which I went, that's effectively 2 columns, right? 2 columns, which when you're thinking about the Canadian flag, there's 2 columns and a center section. So for me, what I ended up going towards is I need to have 2 columns on either side of my center design. Now, as you can tell, so that's where I started. All I was going to do was I was going to center this. I was going to rearrange this so that these were ending up on either side, and I was going to come up with something to replace this, do something with this, and, you know, it was going to be easy. Well, it didn't turn out to be easy, because once I took this out, then I was looking for something else to do, and the sizes were different, and it turned into a big thing. So what I ended up saying to myself, what I wanted to do was I wanted to come up with this compass design. Part of this is Jeannette's fault, because when you're reading the chart, it says, you know, when she was originally looking at designing this, she was going to be using the words true north, strong and free. But she'd used true north strong when she did designs for Canada's 150th birthday. And so she's like, I don't want to do that again. But she talked about it in the chart, and I went, ooh, I like that, true north. But I don't want this to become any more wordy. I liked we stand on guard for thee. I like that. I didn't want to add more words. So I was like going, what do I do about true north? So my answer was I came up with this compass design. Now, as we talked about last week, this is over 1, except for the outer border is over 2, but everything inside of that is over 1. Why is it over 1? Because I couldn't get the shape I wanted and the detail I wanted if I didn't do it over 1. I feel like I'm losing my light. Anyway, And I don't have my ring light, so hopefully I need to wrap this up. Anyway, so this is, I came up with this design, and that took me a while to come up with a design that I was happy with, that I felt looked compassy. And it was really funny. Right up until last night, I was really struggling with what color the N for north should be on the top of that. I designed it out. I had a color in mind, and I just looked at it and I went, that's not going to work. And I went, well, I don't want to do it in white. You know, this outer circle is fine, but I stitched it and then I had to double it to make it so that it showed up. So I didn't want to do it in white because I didn't have room to do like double the size of the, anyway, to add to the end to make it noticeable. And I didn't want to do it in red, and I felt black would be too harsh. And so it turned into a thing where it's like, what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that? It's like, so I left it. I figured it out last night. We'll talk about how that came to be. So this is the same element that you see here. Just in case you're wondering, I had talked before that I'm doing the cross stitches on this. One silk thread over 2 fabric threads on 32 count, except for when there's satin stitches. So this entire section here, these leaves in the center of these diamonds, all of the center motif, all of those were done with 2 strands of silk, just to get the coverage I wanted. Now I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this. Other than this, so this is a whole section of satin stitches here below the flag, and in that case I did it 1 strand of silk instead of the 2. And I was okay with that over here in this context. I'm happy with using 2 for all of this. I'm happy with all of these, the places where I've used it too, but for this individual motif, the satin stitches are done with 1 strand. Now, it isn't full coverage, but like I say, when in doubt, do the stand back. I'm totally fine with how it looks. Okay, so this element is new, which I designed. This is from the chart. This is from the chart. This is also from the chart. So I've taken Jeannette's and just used that. This is not from this chart. There's no loon on this chart. So one of the things that I did in looking for motifs, actually if I'd been smart I would have taken these out, is I didn't stray very far from a designer perspective. So I'm just taking things out of plastic bags so that they don't glare too much. Although, like I say, I think I'm losing my light here. I went to Jeannette Douglas's Canadian Patriotic Snippets series, which I have a bunch of already, which I'm planning on doing as well. Right? So what I have is, this is Canadian Patriotic Series 1 and 2. So you could either do them all as a big sampler, or you could do them as individual pillows. I like the Craft Connection where they did it as a block. Anyway, so in my stash I had 1 and 2. This is 5 and 6, 7 and 8. And 11 and 12, and in 11 and 12 there's another entire design that you don't see anywhere on here. It's a bonus design, which I'm also wanting to do. Anyway, so I went to these ones, and when I was looking for other motifs to use in this design, I went, aesthetically, it's a Jeannette Douglas motif, so it'll probably work. So conveniently, yes, in her. So this is 7 and 8. Is this the one I'm looking for? Yes. It's hard to tell. So there is the loon. Just in case you're wondering, if you haven't heard, we have a coin in Canada. It's our $1 coin, which we refer to as a loonie, because it has a picture of a loon on the coin. And so when they came out, when they changed from having $1 bills to having $1 coins, it's referred to as a loonie. It's not because we're crazy, it's because there's a loon on the coin. So that's where I got my motif for the loon. And fantastically, when I looked at this chart and compared, you know, where the space is to put it, it fit fabulously well down here. So I got rid of my 2 hearts and put in my loon. Technically, the colors for my loon are not the called for colors, but I was keeping within my same palette that I had on here. I wasn't going to introduce another color. I'm totally fine with it. I think it looks just fine. Just ducky. Anyway, in case you're wondering, we also have a $2 coin, and when we came up with those, you know, we have a loonie and a toonie. Makes sense, right? Obviously. All right, so that's where I got my loon from. This is Patriotic Sampler number 5 and 6, and that's where I got my Inukshuk design from. So that exact design I was going to bring into here. Now, why am I adding designs? So I like the concept of the red and the white in this stripe here. I did not like putting the 3 charms on there. I can't tell you why. I didn't like it. I had talked to the ladies out at the Stitching Corner about other charms and what my options were, and I didn't like any of my options. So I didn't want to do charms. I certainly wasn't going to do them in gold. Gold charms on this was just not going to work. I didn't like my options. So then, because I didn't like my options, I needed to come up with something to put on this. So that's where, again, looking at the motifs from the Canadian Patriotic Sampler series, also by Jeannette Douglas. So there is, I got my Inukshuk in. Now, over 2, the Inukshuk is too big. The Inukshuk does not fit. So the answer to that is, well, do it over 1, obviously. So there's, as I said, if anybody can take something and make it more harder than it needs to be, you know that's me. So, of course, I stitched it over 1. So the white and the red, you know, are just the white and the red from the reds in this design. In fact, I made sure that the red over here is the red from here. This red is crimson, this red is poinsettia, this red is hollyberry, which I used over here, and used my graphite. Then, so this totem pole is also from the Jeannette Douglas Designs from this series, but it is from the bonus chart that you get as part of 11 and 12 is where I got the totem pole from. I'm pretty sure, I'm just looking. Yep, the totem pole does not appear on any of the 12 smalls from this series. 12 smalls, 6 charts. Just be careful. Just be careful when you're ordering that you know exactly if you're interested what you're ordering. So it doesn't appear in these ones. It's in the bonus chart that is part of chart number 11 and part of the ones for 11 and 12. So again, it was charted by Jeannette. I pulled it from her design and brought it into mine. Again, over 2, this motif is too big to fit. but if you stitch it over one, it fits. So more over one. And I looked at it and I contemplated, not surprisingly, it called for it to be done in brown, and I thought about that and I contemplated doing that, but I just went, you know, if I used a dark brown, okay, maybe it would have been fine. And I just went, I don't really want to adjust my color palette. I don't want to add another color into this. So I just kept it as Arroyo. Arroyo, not Arroyo, because I'm not using Arroyo. I kept it as the graphite from Caron Waterlilies. But while I was stitching this, and you can see it more clearly up here in my Inukshuk, you know, that as I was going through my length of graphite, so not surprisingly that when you look at this, you can see that graphite is variegated. There is variegation in that thread. And there are some lighter parts of the graphite, and there are some darker parts of the graphite, which was really how this worked out. And that's how I solved my, what color am I going to use for the N on my compass. The gray, the graphite that I used to do the over one for the center part of the compass was a lighter part of the graphite. So if I just used the length of graphite that I was using for these motifs and made sure I started at the dark end, that I would get the dark gray. So it's still technically all part of the same color palette, but I was worried that it wasn't going to be noticeable as it got close here to the gray of the compass, and it's totally fine because the center part is the lighter part of the graphite, and for the N I'm using, you know, further into the length where it's the darker gray. So when I was doing that last night, I was like going, perfect! So I solved my problem, because I was going to come on here and ask you what color I was going to do it in, but I don't need any thank you, because I know you would have provided votes, but I solved it all by myself before I got on here. So I came up with the Inukshuk, I came up with the totem pole. Great. Still had a gap. What was I going to do there? So same thing. I was looking at the motifs that were available, but I didn't want to do the beaver. You know, I contemplated doing the fleur-de-lis, which is a motif for Quebec, but it would need to be in a different color, and I didn't want to add another color, and I didn't want to do the fleur-de-lis in one of the colors in this one, so that didn't work. I didn't want to add a tree because, you know, it would add more to the color palette. I love the concept of this Northern Lights, but again, it's adding more colors into the palette, and it would only be used for that one element, and I felt that would be jarring because I like balance and symmetry, so I couldn't do that one. There was no way I was putting a moose on it. I wasn't putting another version of a heart Canadian flag on there. You know, and you know, some of the other maple leaf options, I was like, you know, did I want to do a maple leaf over one? I was adding the Inukshuk over one. I was adding the totem pole over one. Did I really need to add a big maple leaf over one? And then I looked at it and went, of course you don't have to do a big maple leaf over one. I've got small maple leaves over here. And when I came back and looked at what the width of this was, they fit perfectly. And I just went, there you go. Sort of proportion them out across the length of what this is. So the length of this motif is exactly the same as it is here. I've just changed what's going in. Inukshuk, two maple leaves, which is this design, using the same, these were done with poinsettia, this is done with poinsettia. So Inukshuk, poinsettias, totem pole. I do need to finish adding in the white, but it's just filling that in. I've got about 16 stitches of that left to go in here. That feels a little light. Anyway, I've just got to do the white and this motif, and then I'm into the bottom border. And I played around with where they were going. Originally, I wanted to have the compass over here, but then I couldn't fit this anywhere, and I moved the words. It's a lot of trial and error. And if you want to look at designs where you just go, holy smokes, after you've done a redesign, my admiration for Judy Whitman of JBW Designs and how she does those, anything in the round, bunnies in the round, Christmas in the round, Easter in, I'm making stuff up now, Easter in the round, chickens in the round, cats in the round, dogs in the round, whatever they are. There's a whole bunch of in the rounds. The number of motifs she gets in there and how much time you would need to take to play with the design and how they were spaced and the size of the elements. Holy smokes. Huge kudos to Judy Whitman of JBW Designs on those, because having done this jiggery-roll, move things around, whew, it wasn't a quick process. But I'm very happy with how it's looking. So to me, like I say, this is a redesign that I needed so that I felt better about the weight of this and how things were balanced. I'm sure there will be people who go like, this is awesome just as it is. Why are you driving yourself crazy with moving things around? It's because I love it. Except for, but. Anyway. But I still wanted to do it. So did a little of adjusting to make it so that I felt better about it. Like I said, I haven't checked in with Jeannette, but hopefully I'll have a chance at some point over the next week or 10 days. Maybe I can catch up with her. Like I said, she lives about 5 minutes away from me, so hopefully I can swing over there and go like, how do you feel about this? Are you okay? Now, if she's not okay, it's still going to be okay because I like what I've done. She might go like, ooh, really? But maybe she'll, anyway. I just, because I know her, you know, I don't know that I would necessarily feel that with other designers. Like, are you okay with my changes? Because I'm not sure if they don't like my changes, oh well, it's my piece. It's going to live at my house. It's because I know Jeannette, where I'm going like, what do you think? Did I do okay? Now, if she comes back and tells me I should have done something differently, then it's going to be too late. And if she does, that would be interesting because I would come back and tell you and say, hey, if you're wanting the adjustments, maybe think this is what Jeannette said. But anyway, one more thing to go in here and then I'm into the bottom border. But that's how, those are all the things that went through my head. Was it easy? No. Was it fast? Not a chance. It took a lot of work on my part, working out how these things would fit together and what I wanted to do and which elements I was going to use. The number of times I looked at motifs and went, 1, 2, 3, too big. Too big even over one. Ooh, what about, ooh, no, doesn't work. Anyway, but, again, you need, part of that is that I had resources. Part of it is that I had all, the snippets that I have to come up with other options. I am incredibly grateful that Jeannette charted out an Anouk Shook. I'm incredibly grateful that Jeannette charted out a totem pole because I totally stole those from other designs and went, oh, thank heavens, I can use that while I'm doing all of this. So out of everything I've adjusted, the only things that I designed myself was this compass. Everything else is a motif that I took from another Jeannette Douglas Designs pattern. Like I say, I adjusted the years that I've shown, and in case you missed last week's video, 1816-7, which is when the British North American Act came into force, which effectively made Canada a country. 1916, which is when women in Alberta, and again, I need a clarification, not all women, because certainly there were women of a variety of colors that did not get the right to vote, but that's when technically the beginning of women being able to vote in Alberta occurred, as well as other provinces across Canada. And 1965, that is the year that this version of the Canadian flag was became the official flag of Canada. Was 1965. I know. not as long ago as some might think. Again, for me, it's the only flag I've known in my lifetime. But anyway, so that is the process. You know, is it easy? No. Does it take a lot of work? Yes. Does it take time, work, energy, looking at other things? You bet. Am I very happy that I did it? Yes, because I love how my sampler is looking. I can't wait to get, I'm a little disappointed in myself that I didn't get working on this bottom border, because there's still a fair chunk of stitching to go on that. So I need to get my act together and stitch like a wild thing so I can get that done. Which means my days for starting work on my new piece in June, we're running out of time. So check back next week and see how I do. All right, so that is the topic, but I also want to say this is where Flosstube, oh gosh, I really have lost the light suddenly. Need to wrap this up. Where Flosstube comes into it. And I'm going to point to Deb, the traveling stocking stitcher, again, because she does an amazing job of also talking through, I'm going to swivel this just to see if we can't get into some more light over here. Amazing job of talking through her process where she's, you know, because she changes tons of things, which I love. Oh my goodness, I saw this chart and I went, ooh, I could make a stocking out of that. You go like, I'm sorry, what? How did you look at that chart and see a stocking? Now, the reason why it's even if you aren't necessarily a Christmas stocking stitcher, trust me, I have not stitched a lot of stockings. It is incredibly valuable to watch all of those videos because she does an amazing job of talking about her thought process. What did I consider? How did I look at my palette? Was I feeling good about my palette? I was okay at the beginning. Midway through, I felt I needed to change. No, it turned out it was okay. I moved this around and I didn't like that element. She's really great about talking through her process of how she's changing it and what her thoughts were. And so if you're someone who's going like, I think I want to change things, but I don't really know how to do it. Part of that is just listening to people on Flosstube talking about, you know, the ones who go, this is my thought process around how I'm making those changes will help you on your journey to being more comfortable with making changes. So I'm going to throw it right back to watch Deb, the traveling stocking stitcher, because she does an amazing job of talking through her process. And I love watching her videos so that I too can learn about what she's doing and how she's thinking about it. And, you know, her versions of proportion and balance and color palettes is great. And, you know, again, Deb, thank you. Thank you so much for having a Flosstube. I love watching them. All right, with that, I'm going to wrap it up because we really are losing the light here. I've been looking online. I'm envious of all of those people who were at the Stitch and Stash retreat in Edmonton. I was messaging with Cheryl of Happy Handcraft Studio. She has promised me that she's going to be doing a video about the Stitch and Stash retreat, which I can't wait. It's Sunday, you know. How I'm assuming I'm not going to have to wait very long, but anyway, she owes me nothing, but I can't wait to see her video around, you know, what it was like at the Stitch and Stash retreat, what she bought. I laughed because one of my messages to her was like, I saw the video on Facebook. You're in line with your credit card out. What are you getting? Am I going to see it? Are you doing a Flosstube? I need to know. And she laughed at me and she said, of course I'm going to do a Flosstube, but I'm not telling you what I'm getting until you see it on Flosstube, which is totally fine. It's just like, it's the really great thing about things being online. I saw you. You were in line with your credit card. You're shopping. What are you getting? Anyway, so check for a video coming sometime soon from her. I can't wait to watch it. All right, with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you for stopping by and spending some time with me. As always, tell your friends, invite them to come to Stitching at the Library, like the video, share with your friends, tell somebody if you've enjoyed the video. You can't always count on a YouTube algorithm popping my videos up their way. But anyway, I hope everybody's staying safe. as always, thinking of the people of Ukraine, thinking of all of the people impacted by the fires, thinking of the firefighters, thinking, as usual, there's a number of global events going on that we have people that we're thinking about. So I hope everybody is staying safe. Safety first, safety first, safety first. I know I'm a broken record, but it's that one time where you aren't being aware of your circumstances that things can go, unfortunately, seriously wrong. So I hope everybody is staying safe. I hope everybody is staying healthy. I hope you're finding some time to do some stitching, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, guys.